Thank you everybody for joining us this evening. I am John. I am the event coordinator at Murder by the Book. At the moment, I'm obviously not, well, not obviously because people think I'm in the store all the time. I'm not at Murder by the Book. I'm in my living room. I'm not going to get emotional, but so we've been doing like probably over 200 of these author events. This one, doing it virtually, is the one that has just like hurt the most, because when I realized that we were going to have all three of you with books all out within a week of each other, but we wouldn't actually be able to get you all into the store and see you together, like we have all just been like grumbling about it because so for those of you who are watching, we so 10 years
we are verklempt.
I know. I mean, drinking by myself is not the same.
No.
It is not the same.
Not
at all.
No, so
Wait,
how come I have water? I have water.
Oh,
I have water too, Tasha. Don't feel bad, girl. We gotta hydrate.
So I've been reading and going to Deanna Raybourn book events since before I worked at Murder by the Book. Same with Tasha and Lauren. Like, as evidence, I have set up my little area behind me. You can see I have all of the Lady Emily's. We have all of Tasha's. We have a Lauren. So like, these are all my books in my living room. So like I'm so glad that we're able to do this and we can do it virtually, but it also hurts that we're doing it virtually because that means we're missing out on getting to give everybody hugs and big meals afterwards. And also it's very weird to be doing this with Deanna because if many of you guys know, she is the last actual real author event we got to host at the store. So March 13th last year, they had just canceled the Houston rodeo. Penguin had been telling all of their authors we're not doing any more tours. People who were out on the road were getting pulled back in. And Deanna, you said like they gave you the option whether you wanted to keep going or whether you wanted to come home?
They did. They called me halfway during my tour and asked me if I wanted to cancel the rest of my events and come in. And it just, all I could think about was the fact that all these bookstores were probably getting ready to go through a really, really hard time. And I told my publisher, I said, if they're still willing to have the events and they want me, I'm going to finish my tour. And so I was able to stay out, and yours was the next to last event that I did. I shut you down. I shut down the fountain. Every bookstore I went to, I was their last event. So I kind of felt a little bit like Typhoid Mary. But it is surreal to be here again. And I was so excited though when I realized the three of us were releasing books. 1 week, I don't think we've ever released books that close together before. Nope. And we haven't done a joint event with the three of us in years.
No,
and the last place was Murder by the Book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Way too long.
Way too long.
Yes. Definitely.
Yes.
So if you
we need to recreate our Charlie's Angels picture from Murder by the Book.
We do.
Yeah.
In our little squares. Guys, the Brady Bunch meets Charlie's Angels.
Yes.
There we go.
So for everybody who is watching virtually, I'm going to get them the authors introduced in a second. But if you have questions for them, please drop them in the Q&A. I'll be checking the chat too, but the Q&A is just a little bit easier. If you don't see it, it's like right down here, a little Q&A thing. You can post questions there. We will get to those. So I'm going to start with introductions. We're so excited to have Deanna Raybourn with us. Her newest book is An Unexpected Peril. So she is the author of the award-winning New York Times bestselling Lady Julia Gray series, as well as the USA Today bestselling and Edgar-nominated Veronica Speedwell mysteries and several standalones. We're so excited to have Lauren Willig with us. Lauren is the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of 20 novels, including The Summer Country, The Ashford Affair, and The English Wife, as well as the RITA Award-winning Pink Carnation series. An alumna of Yale University, she has a graduate degree in history from Harvard and a JD from Harvard Law School. She lives in New York City with her husband, kindergartner, toddler, and vast quantities of coffee. Her new book is Band of Sisters. And we're also joined tonight by Tasha Alexander. Her new book, The Heart of Florence, is actually out next Tuesday. So if you've ordered it, it's coming. It's just not out just yet. She is the author of the New York Times bestselling Lady Emily mysteries. The daughter of two philosophy professors, she studied English literature and medieval history at the University of Notre Dame. She and her husband, novelist Andrew Grant, who is now also writing as Andrew Child, live on a ranch in southeastern Wyoming. So again, so excited to have everybody with us tonight. Like I said, if you guys have questions, we will definitely get to those. But to get us started, we're going to start with Deanna. Deanna, can you tell everybody a little bit about the new book in the series, and if anybody is unfamiliar with you as an author, a little bit about your character?
Sure. This is the sixth book in the series. You can pick up with this book if you're not familiar with it. I try really, really hard to avoid spoilers, so you're not going to know who done it in previous books. It follows the exploits of a Victorian lepidopterist, which is just a $10 word for butterfly hunter. She travels the world collecting butterflies, but she's been stuck in England for a couple of years because she keeps falling over dead bodies. She has a sidekick who is a grumpy aristocrat. Well, he's an aristocratic black sheep, but he's still grumpy. He has a habit of reading French romance novels and always stuffing his pockets with candy, and he's really, really hot. And the two of them have teamed up together, solving a number of mysteries, and this time they're launching their mystery from what I have created. It's a thing called the Curiosity Club, which is the nickname for the Hippolyta Club. The Hippolyta Club is it's an organization for extraordinary women, botanists and mathematicians and explorers and musicians. And one of them, unfortunately, has apparently fallen off of a mountain while she was trying to climb it. And it's Veronica Speedwell, that's my main character. It's her sidekick who discovers that the mountaineer was actually murdered.
Perfect. All right. And so, Lauren, I know yours is not a series. We've got a standalone with Band of Sisters. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. But first, I keep hearing when Deanna said murdered, I keep hearing it in the Poirot voice. Murder. I'm sorry, yes. I just said it out. Anyway, there is no murder in Band of Sisters, although, there are a lot of French people. And I won't lie, there is death, just not of the, can the sleuth figure it out sort. This book is a standalone. It's based on the true story of the Smith College Relief Unit, a group of enterprising Smith College grads who charged off to France at the height of World War I to bring humanitarian aid to French villagers right behind the front lines. I found a treasure trove of letters in the archives at Smith College. All of these women they were real, they did this stuff, writing home about their time in France. These wonderful, snarky, hilarious letters, talking about their mishaps with livestock, their run-ins with overbearing British officers, and the crazy excuses every single Canadian, American, and British soldier within 30 miles made to just, happen to stop by their headquarters. So, I had so much fun with this story. I was so impressed by these amazing women who I had never heard of, who did all of these incredible things 9 miles from the front lines. And I hope everyone else will love them as much as I do.
Perfect. All right. And now for Tasha, can you tell us about The Dark Heart of Florence?
Yeah, of course, but first, those bloody, overbearing English officers. My goodness. This is the 15th book in the Emily series. Emily used to be an intrepid Victorian young lady. Now she is an intrepid Edwardian young lady. Victoria finally kicked the bucket a couple of years ago, which I never thought would happen in the course of this series. But this book finds her in Florence with her ever so dashing husband, Colin Hargraves, who is an agent of the crown, and his work for the empire really kind of takes center stage in this book. And so we've got Emily in 1903 Florence, but then there is a second timeline about a young woman during the Renaissance in Florence, and their two stories intertwine. And one of the things that I love the most about the Renaissance story is that it touches on the book hunters, which were a real thing during the Renaissance, where people went out, kind of adventurous, intrepid sorts, who went into monasteries and searched through their libraries to find missing ancient manuscripts. Which, why can't we do that now? That would be great. I would do that job.
So it completely blows my mind that you said this is the 15th book in the series. That just is insane.
I know. I still don't really believe it.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
So, because Lauren, you had what, 12 in the Carnation series?
Yeah, there were 12. And I think Tasha and I started hanging out when there were only 2 Lady Emilys. So it's like when you see people suddenly get really old on you, it's like, how are there 15 books? You can't have a 15-book-year-old series.
Yeah. And for watching, Deanna is not slacking. She has had 2 series that are like 6 books each.
No, because Tasha and I started publishing about the same time, and we have, I think, the same number of books out.
Yeah.
Hers are in one series and mine are divided up, but I mean, it's
And
Lauren who's actually just kind of outdone herself. I think, Lauren, how many books have you done altogether, Lauren?
This is number 21. So this is
There
my book
we go.
Left to Drink.
There we go.
Wow.
It makes me
We are
tired
some
to think about.
enterprising and efficient young ladies ourselves.
Yes.
Absolutely
Just
we are.
writing away with our quill pens and our garrets.
Mine actually is a Garrett.
Oh, I am so jealous. I really want a garret.
So I want to talk a little bit about this is the obligatory research question. So what kind of research do you do when you're, because everybody wants to know about research, and also kind of to go along with that, what is the craziest thing that you found when you're doing research that you're just like, oh, I could never put that in a book because no one would ever believe that? Let's go backwards and start with Tasha this time.
Well, I think the thing with this book is I went to Florence in November of 2019. And so that was kind of the last big trip I took pre-COVID. And in fact, so I was there for a couple of weeks and did all this research, which was amazing. But I felt like I needed to go back to Florence. And my son and I were actually booked to leave for Florence on February 29th, 2020. Obviously, that did not happen because February 28th was when the State Department said no travel to Italy. And I remember saying to him, oh, well, maybe, because it was his spring break. And I said, well, maybe we'll just go right after school gets out in May. And then by mid-April, I was like, maybe we'll go to Florence for Christmas. We'll go to Florence for Christmas. Yeah, we still haven't gone to Florence. So, with this book, I mean, like I said, I did a lot with the book hunters, and I'm just so grateful that I was able to get to Florence in November so that I could see the city, because I think for me, it really helps to kind of walk through the streets and hear the sounds of the language and eat the food. Just, Florence is so full of amazing museums, and not just the Uffizi, which, we all know about, but there's this wonderful museum that is it is a palazzo that was built in the Middle Ages, and it's still set up like a house, a medieval house. So actually that's where I wound up. I spent a lot of time in there when I was in Florence, and that is actually the primary setting for the book.
Is that the Stibert Museum?
It's actually the Palazzo Dazzanetti.
Okay. All right. And so how about you, Lauren? How about research?
Well, this book was a really weird one for me because usually I start with secondary sources and I triangulate as far as I can towards primary sources. But, usually you have lots of gaps. You're trying to piece together bits and pieces. You're tracking stuff down because it's not all there. This book, I stumbled on a memoir by the member of the Smith College Relief Unit and thought, okay, this story is crazy. These Smith women behind the front lines. I couldn't really believe they were there. And then I tried to track stuff down, and I went, as I usually would, to secondary sources, and there were none. Nothing. There are a couple of lines in books about American women who went overseas during World War I. There's one book about that. And there's another book about Americans, eyewitnesses to the Great War, where I think they get 2 lines. But there is a professor at Smith currently writing a monograph about these women, but it isn't actually written yet. She's currently working on it. But what I wound up finding was, so I looked at the Smith Special Collections library guide, and they had the names of the members of the unit, and there were papers from them. And I was like, okay, there's something on their website where it says they'll digitize stuff for you. Because at the time my kids were 1 and 5, I couldn't up and go to Northampton for a week, much less a month. And so I was like, well, you seem to have some papers. Would you mind, digitizing the contents of these folders for me? I had no idea how much stuff was actually in there. And they were like, that's 2,000 pages of material. And I was like, do you mind? They're like, well, no, but they'll fee. I'm like, okay, I will pay whatever you ask of me. And they did it. They actually did. I love the librarians of Smith College Special Collections are my heroes. All librarians are my heroes, but these librarians are my superheroes because they did it. They digitized everything I asked for. And suddenly I had all of these real letters home from the Somme, written by these women in these insane conditions, living on the grounds of a ruined chateau in these freezing cold army barracks, where they're writing with like stubs of pencils on CAD stationery from Paris hotels, from, you know, on their way to their headquarters. And they're all, I mean, it's because, I mean, Tasha and Deanna know it's so rare to find those unedited, at the moment impressions of events. Like, there are memoirs, but people lie about their past all the time, where they forget, just remember. But suddenly I had in front of me, not just the in the moment accounts where they were telling what happened to them day by day, but multiple versions where like different women in the group would be writing home about the same thing. And you can compare and contrast and sort of get a sense of the different personalities and how different people react to the same stuff. And also who's trying to downplay stuff for the folks at home and who's telling it as it is. And it just, I mean, this book, honestly, there were times I almost abandoned the book and just did an annotated collection of the letters, because the letters, they are snarky and funny. And
you should, as a companion volume.
Well, I think I might have to fight that nice professor at Smith. But no, I mean, so in the end, so actually what I did do.
I mean, don't you kind of,
go ahead.
Don't you kind of want to write a dissertation?
You know, every night, you know, there have only been 2 times in my life when I've been tempted to write nonfiction, and this was one of them. But all of the chapters start with fake letters from the women home, where I basically, in some of them, I very closely paraphrased the real letters. Other ones I totally made up. And in some of them where the letters were in the public domain, because they've been published in the Smith Alumni Quarterly, I might have taken whole phrases from the real letters, because I love these letters so much. I want people to have the experience of reading them and getting that sort of eyewitness, you know, unedited, snarky account home. But what really cracked me up, and then I'll stop going on about this, is that a bunch of excerpts from these letters were published in the Smith Alumni Quarterly in 1917 and 1918, because people would send letters home to their families, and their families would forward them to the Alumni Quarterly, which would take the good bits, you know, nothing controversial, nothing that might reveal dissension in the group, but like, you know, the fun bits, and they would print them there. And then you start seeing in the private letters, stop sending my letters into the alumni and stop writing to you, which I thought was hilarious.
Oh my God, it's like looping from Heidi Cruz's group chat on the text. I mean, come on, that's exactly what it is. It's like somebody broke the code.
It's like, and now you're off the chat.
Well, for me, research takes 2 different tracks. There's the general Victoriana, and then there's whatever is specific to the particular book that I'm researching. And as far as the Victoriana itself, I double majored in English and history because I knew I wanted to write historical fiction. But I was majoring in English and history at a fairly small Texas university in South Texas. I graduated in 1990, so it's been a while. And if you were majoring in that at that university at that time, what you learned about was what white guys in Western Europe were doing. And what they were doing was war. I mean, for 2,000 years, they did war. And so that's what we learned about. So by the time I got my degree, I was really bored with war and really wanting to know what the women had been doing the whole time. So that was kind of, I mean, I guess it was a sort of an independent study. I started on my own trying to figure out what were women getting up to. And it dovetailed really beautifully with my love of Victoriana when I discovered these Victorian female explorers. Because we have this set idea that Victorian women did certain things and they behaved certain ways, and oh, they so did not. You know, I just ran across a piece of research this week that I absolutely love because it's taken from censuses of the time where they were asking for occupations. And this particular year in the entire country of England, over 3,600 women were butchers. And that's not something you think of women doing as an occupation, and yet they were. And a lot of times you have these middle-class women, usually middle-class, who were getting out and seeing the world. They weren't discovering anything because people already lived in those places, but they were, in a lot of cases, the first Western European or the first Western European woman who had ever come to these places. And they recorded their impressions. And like Lauren said, there's a lot of self-editing. There's a lot of familial editing that goes on sometimes when these papers are preserved. But that's the great thing about Victorians, is they wrote everything down. They wrote letters home. They kept journals. They would prepare lectures for professional and kind of community organizations. They prepared just talks, like, I mean, I was a child of the 70s. I remember when people would come home from Acapulco and do the slideshows, and you had to sit through them after their vacations. They would do basically the same thing. They would come back and they would get all their friends together, and they would have these lengthy evening entertainments where they would read passages out from their diaries while of their travels. And it was a very, very big thing for people to record what they did. And so that's one of those things. It's very, very easy. We're almost spoiled sometimes with how much material we get that's Victorian. The challenge is kind of winding your way through it to find out what's been left out. Like if you read some of Queen Victoria's diaries, they're fabulous. They're awesome. They're so engaging and interesting. How much more interesting would they be if Princess Beatrice hadn't burned half of them? Because as soon as her mother died, 1901, boom, here's the bonfire. And she's pitching papers out and burning all the good stuff. I mean, because the stuff she left was just tantalizing enough that you're like, oh God, what did we miss? And she recopied them all into notebooks. So it looked like it was this complete record. And yet there's massive gaps in it, massive gaps. They just drive me crazy.
Well, you know that was all the good stuff. That was all the good stuff. Because you don't burn the boring stuff. You burn the good stuff.
That's when Victoria was
we should have a
smack.
Well, and this is like the hatchet job that Jane Austen's niece did on her letters, which drives me nuts because everyone has this opinion of Austen as this very prim spinster, but you get the bits in the letters about the ones that she didn't manage to find and burn, about Austen getting so drunk she puked, and it's like, really, and you wonder what was like with Victoria, what was in those unedited letters that were very deliberately destroyed to create a very Victorian image of a Georgian character.
Or my favorite Jane Austen quote that they somehow let slip through, where she talks about a woman she knew who had a miscarriage. Oh, she must have looked at her husband unexpectedly because the man was so ugly. I mean, she complained about people's bad breath, and you're like, you let that get through? Oh, the good stuff really went on the fire. And yeah, there are things that Victoria said where it's very clear that she enjoyed her physical relationship with Albert. It's very clear that she did not enjoy pregnancy or the early stages of having an infant around. Not at all this beautiful, Victorian picture of motherhood. That was not who she was at all. And yet all the good bits have been taken out. And as far as
okay, but at the same time, don't you want to be really sure? Like, maybe we need to do it for each other, the three of us. Like, don't you want to make sure someone destroys all of our good bits? Because we can't have people hearing that.
I think technological obsolescence will do it for us. Because given the way, like,
I hope so.
Regularity.
No, this chat is forever.
Until they upgrade the operating system.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then it becomes obsolete. And as far as specifics, it's, there are gorgeous nonfiction things being published every year. All of the minutes of the activities of the House of Lords and House of Commons are archived online. I go trolling through those. All the newspapers of the time practically have been archived. They're online. You can go find them. That's the stuff that I have the best time digging into. And then I just continue to build on because every year there's a new biography of Victoria with a new slant or a new really awesome book about poisons. I just got 2 new poison books last week. I'm so happy.
Yay.
So that actually kind of leads perfectly into this question from Caroline. And I just wanted to say, I didn't say this as we got started. I want to thank everybody that's joining us this evening. You guys have all bought a book from Murder by the Book. We appreciate that so much. Everybody comes in and wants to know how things are going at the store, and things are good. I mean, we're hanging in there, but they're definitely not good like they would be if we had 3 to 5 author events coming up. So we really appreciate the support from the store. It's kind of fun to see all of the names of people asking questions and in the chat, knowing that like we've processed your order. So we can't thank you guys enough. So Caroline wants to know, she says, how do you navigate writing historical characters into your novels, like Prince Eddie and the last Veronica Speedwell, and possibly other royal characters in the new book? How do you decide which traits to highlight and when to involve them with plots while still I cannot talk tonight. Y'all have me all flustered. While still staying in line with their own history. So how do you know when you can start playing and when you need to like be more specific?
Right. The rule that I follow, and every historical fiction author who deals with real people kind of draws their own line. Mine is, I will never knowingly violate what we know of their personality, their character. I might monkey a tiny bit with a timeline, but I'm not going to change the essence of who they were. There was a really horrible theory that went around in the 1970s that Eddie was, he was the eldest grandson of Queen Victoria. He was the Duke of Clarence. He would have been Edward VII's heir and successor if he lived. There was a horrible rumor that went around in the 70s. There was this theory that he was Jack the Ripper. It's bullshit. He was not. But it got some traction, and it's one of those things that still gets trotted out about him. There was a scandal a couple of years after the setting of a murderous relation that Eddie was involved with. And from the events that went on, we don't know if he engaged in cross-dressing or if he did not. We don't know what his sexual orientation was for certain. So what I did was try to find a way of answering those questions that was as respectful as I could be to Eddie as a human being. He was, in a lot of ways, an unlikable person just because of the way he conducted himself. That has absolutely nothing to do with his orientation or his choice of romantic partners. He was just simply a person who had a personality that really only a mother could love in a lot of respects, and his mother did very much love him. So that was the angle that I took for that book, is it has to do with Princess Alexandra, later Queen Alexandra, and her adoration for this kind of troubled oldest son who would not have probably been up to being a really fantastic king, especially under the pressures of World War I. So I took that tack with it. But I mean, Lauren, do you have any characters in the new book who were actually...
Well, the new book is funny. The new book is weird for me in so many ways, because what I usually do is I have entirely fictional characters in an entirely fictional story that's built up of a pastiche of real things I've stolen from real people's lives. And I often have them interact with real historical characters, much as you do with the Speedwells. I co-opted George III for one of my Pink books. I had, George III had this interim madness in 1804, and I decided actually he hadn't gone mad that year. He had been kidnapped by the French and drugged, but I could get away with that. There was a gap. And also the Pinks were deliberately, everyone knows that they are not straight history. So I was able to do more over the top things. I think how you play with real historical characters also depends on the type of books. I mean, with the Pink books, they are so tongue-in-cheek. I could do a lot more. When I went to writing standalones, when I brought in real historical people, I had to play it a lot straighter. Although, as Deanna said, I never would deliberately contradict anything that actually happened. There's just room in the margins sometimes where we really don't know what someone's doing. So, but anyway, the weird thing about Band of Sisters is, so my characters are all really closely based on real people, except for my two main heroines who are entirely fictional. But, this was a case where this is the closest I've ever come to writing biographical historical fiction, where like everything my characters do is stuff the real people did. But I just didn't feel it was fair, having read those letters with those injunctions to stop publishing their letters, to take their real names and, plaster their thoughts on the page. So this way, some of my characters are totally fictional. Some are not quite as fictional, are drawn very closely from the way I perceived people as, based on reading their letters. But the funny thing is there are almost no real people who show up in this book. So it's, very, very, it's almost like, aside from my people being fictional, everything in this book actually happened, which is so different from the usual, fictional people, fictional scenario with real characters there.
John, is it okay if I ask Tasha a question?
Of course.
Okay, because I'm really curious about this timeline. I haven't had a chance to read the new book, of course, but I'm really curious about your Renaissance timeline and your female character and all of that, who you alluded to earlier. Is she based on someone in particular?
She is not. The thing, you know, it's funny because I think in today's society, we hold the Renaissance just as such a, you know, people worship the Renaissance, right? Oh, if we could only have been in Florence during the Renaissance. And I would say that of all of the different time periods I've researched, there has not been a single time period in place where women had a worse lot than wealthy women in Renaissance Florence. I mean, okay, not wealthy women in Renaissance Florence also, because the not wealthy women generally have a terrible lot in life, no matter where they are or when they are. But as much as we think about, you know, the enlightened thinking of the Renaissance and the art, and there's all this exciting stuff going on, you've got all these ancient ideas being rediscovered and discussed, and, you know, Florentine Neoplatonism, and you've got Michelangelo and all these amazing figures. The women, they weren't allowed. This is literally a thing. You are not supposed to look out a window, because if you were looking out the window of your house, what if someone saw you? What if a man saw you? Well, now you've disgraced your family. Now you can't get married. Now I can't think of, I mean, maybe you could try to argue that women in Pericles' Athens had it almost as bad, but I'm not even sure that's true, honestly. These women, you know, all of us are so embroiled in the Victorian era in many of our books. And there are so many wonderful stories about these Victorian female iconoclasts, or even if they're not, you know, like Gertrude Bell out mapping Persia, they are kind of the power behind the husband, right? They've got a lot of political power, and there's stuff they can get done quietly and on the sly. This was all but impossible in the Renaissance in Florence. And so I found that so fascinating, because it goes so counter to how we as contemporary Americans think about the Renaissance, right? So Mina, my character, in the Renaissance part of the story, her grandfather was one of these book hunters who was off, you know, combing through monastic libraries looking for ancient manuscripts. And so because of her relationship with her grandfather, and he's very close to her, she's educated. And there were women, I mean, some of the Medici actually let the daughters be educated, but there's a way in which it's almost just insanely frustrating, because they get the education, but they can't do anything with it, even in the way that we think of the Victorian women behind the scenes doing it. So I wanted to write about, what if you were this young woman in Florence? You're actually smart. You can delve into these ancient manuscripts, read them in Latin, read them in Greek. What do you do with yourself if your entire raison d'etre is to not stand in a window and not disgrace your family, and then make a political marriage, and then just quietly run the household and not talk to anyone?
You know, so I was a Renaissance studies major in college. I think it's so interesting that the Italian city-states are worse for women than anywhere else in the same time period. That, you know, in England and in France, women have so much more freedom and agency and political power. And I wonder if there is something about the draw from classical antiquity. Because when you talk about Neoplatonism, Plato's ideas about women and their role are particularly loathsome.
Absolutely. But you know, the other really interesting thing is that even if you just look at Italy, if you look at the city-states in Italy during the Renaissance, Florence, which is a republic, is worse than the cities for women than the city-states that are autocratic.
Yes, like
so I wonder also if
better than the Duchy of right. Whereas because of course it's almost as bad as Florence. Sorry, we're just nerding out here.
Yeah, and so it's almost like, God, I wish we were together so we could really be, you know, but you know, it's almost that you have this idea that if you've got a democracy, It's even more dangerous to have women thinking and having a voice because, oh my God, what if they actually have an impact on the politics?
Well,
Whereas if it's an
basically-
autocracy, they can go talk about poetry or whatever.
That's exactly what it is. I think they have this whole idea of what they call we are two, which is virtue, but not virtue in the Christian or medieval sense. It's a manly virtue. It's a Republican virtue, but it's exclusively it's like, Michelangelo's David going like this. It's manliness. And it excludes women and it excludes decadent aristocracies, which have been feminized. And that's exactly what it is. Their whole idea of the Republic is drawn from this idea of testosterone. Sorry, it just, yeah.
No, I mean, basically your only option is to be a Venetian courtesan and
I love that.
get your happy ass to the court of Francis I as fast as you can.
Yeah, I mean, if they had a much better time. Or even that backwater England.
Okay, but wouldn't we all be happier in France anyway? Come on. Yes.
This is so great. I told Matt beforehand, I was like, I have a couple of generic questions to get things going, but I'm clearly not
honey,
gonna,
you had to know that wasn't going to last.
No, I was like, but really, I'm not going to have to do any. I was like, I'm not going to have to do any work tonight. I just have to get y'all going, and this is great. This is
I can't think of how many times some combination or all three of us have turned up, and the bookseller has said, "Do you need no? No, we've got this. We're fine."
Yep.
Well, you might have to shut us up at some point, but
Oh yeah, that's what you got to do.
Now you can just put us on mute.
John has all the power this time.
I do. So Jody wants to know, since clearly you guys, get along, you've done a lot of stuff together, have you guys ever thought of doing any kind of collaboration at some point, whether it's Lauren, you do the 3 Ws, but even a short story collection, kind of like the thing that Susanna Kearsley and C.S. Harris and Anna Lee Huber just did recently. Have you guys ever thought about potentially doing something like that?
Every now and then it has been in the back of my head that the three of us could write an amazing book together, but we've all had so many other commitments, like the Team W books for me on the side and all that, and there's just never been the right time.
I'd love to see Lauren find the time, frankly. I mean,
especially right now.
I don't know. I mean, we would probably have such a good time doing it.
Yeah, we would. We could hole up in your guest house,
and I think it would be a really fun book to read.
We could hole up in your guest house, Tasha.
Yep.
Now that you mentioned the guest house,
yes,
we have to do this.
I'll show up and bring snacks.
This is what we should do.
Andrew can cook for us.
Yes,
because we're working.
Yes,
better.
So Emma wants to know. So as far as writing goes, do you guys outline, or the plotter or pantser, Deanna?
I outline because that's how you get paid. You have to write a synopsis to get paid at that stage. So I have that as my outline. I'm an organized pantser. I know A and B and M and R and Z and not necessarily any of the other points in between. But I have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing.
How about you, Lauren?
Well, they've taken the synopsis clause out of my contract because we all know that anything I write about the book before I actually write it will have no relation to what actually appears on the page, including the names of the main characters. Every now and then I'll find because I now sell on a paragraph, and sometimes I'll find those old paragraphs where I say what I thought was going to happen in the book. I'm like, who are these people? What book is this? Who wrote this? Sounds vaguely interesting. But I'm very much a pantser. I sort of have a vague idea of what's going. I have a lot of bits where I'm like, and then something will happen. What I do need to do is I usually plot about 5 chapters ahead because I need that sense of trajectory. I need to know where my characters are going. Otherwise, they get locked into endless banter and won't shut up. So I need kilos. But if I plot too far ahead, I don't know who they are yet. And so I start trying to force them into situations they don't want to be in. And that's why I get writer's block and get stuck until I figure out that, wait, I overplotted. They don't want to do this stuff. I have to figure out what they actually do want to do. So I have these running outlines. I'm constantly sort of chapters 1 through 5, then becomes the outline for chapters 3 through 7 and so on. It just keeps rolling.
Yeah. And how about you, Tasha?
Yeah, I am absolutely a pantser. If my agent even will say, she's like, please don't write a synopsis because no one will ever pay you again if they read it. I need to know the setup. And so if that's A, I know that Z is that it all works out in the end. And I have no idea what happens in between. And if I try to figure out before I write it, it's just the most inane load of bollocks, to quote my husband. I always feel like it's like telling a story to a little kid. And I feel like that's really what was my training for being a writer. You have a little kid, they want to hear a story. You don't get to outline it, right? Because in fact, I remember my son, Alexander, he would say to me, we would sit on our front porch and I would be telling him stories. And if I was too slow, he'd say, mommy, don't hit pause, hit play. And so I think that helped me kind of develop a sort of sense, a sort of an intuitive sense of pace and things like that. But it also made me completely incapable of in a coherent method of either outlining or writing a synopsis of communicating what I need the 400 pages, I guess. I'm just disorganized. I always feel like there was a wonderful New Yorker cartoon that was a couple scientists and they're at a giant blackboard working on some equation that's, math or science or something. And it's a proof of some sort. And so they've got like step 1 is this, and then step 2, step 3, step 4, a miracle occurs. And that's how I feel writing is. Like you've got the first couple of steps and then a miracle occurs and you figure it out. But yeah, I wish I could outline. I'm envious of people who can outline and know what they're doing, but that's just, my brain doesn't work that way.
I know. I remember reading Elizabeth George's book about how she does these 100-page outlines. And my brain broke reading that.
Yes.
Because the more detailed my synopsis, the more you can guarantee I'm going to deviate from it. My editor sent me flat copy last week for my next book. And I said, oh, this is great. But by the way, I just changed the main character's name.
Yep. I once had a book published with the wrong name on the back of the book because they made a mistake of going from my synopsis, and whoever did the flat copy clearly had not read the book.
Oh no,
that's not their name anymore, which no one noticed until the arcs went out.
So Tasha,
but Deanna, I had the same experience with Elizabeth George's book. My first editor was editing Elizabeth George at the time that she wrote that book, and she sent it to me. And I read it. And I mean, she outlines the entire book. And then she outlines each chapter. And then she outlines each scene. And I mean, obviously it works.
It's
obviously it works for her.
Clearly,
I would not only lose my mind, I would be so bored I would never finish writing the book.
No, because
I want to know what happens too. That's why I write to the end.
Yeah, I mean, you have one chance to finish the book for the first time. It's like popping the cork on a bottle of champagne.
It goes flat.
You only get the pop the first time. And so for me, all of that kind of needs to go into the first draft. So I deviate wildly from my synopses. I write it down because I have to, but I don't stick.
So Tasha, since every book, and they've progressed over the course of the series, every book you have Emily's story and then you have the past story. So do you write them both at the same time, or do you write Emily's and then go back and figure out what that other is? How does that work? Tasha, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Lauren, Tasha, can you hear me?
I write it as you read it.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? My internet is so
you're good now. You're good now.
There's probably okay, good. There's probably a moose tramping on something. I write it as you read it. I don't. I mean, like I said, I know the setup for each of the two stories, but I don't know how they're going to come together until they come together. And that's usually a really nice day when I'm like, oh, it came together. Thank God. Because I like reading stories with two timelines. And so my sort of rule is I want to write what I want to read. And so, because that writing experience is really like reading. in a way, except that you got to make it so that everything comes out how you want it to. But yeah, so I write it, I write the first Emily chapter, and then I write the first Renaissance chapter, for example, in this book.
So got a couple of COVID pandemic related questions. So Gigi Pandian is watching. So if you guys are, if you guys are watching and you don't know Gigi Pandian, she does the Jaya Jones mysteries and the Accidental Alchemist mysteries, which are fantastic. She's got a new spin-off series coming out later this year. I actually potentially got to hear Gigi's her editor talk about the book today at launch. I'm so excited about this new book. So you guys should.
I got to read it.
I have been told that there might be a copy heading my way very soon. So I'm very excited.
Oh, you'll love it. You'll love it.
So Gigi wants to know, do you have any writing-related silver linings of this crummy year? She says for her, one is getting to attend Murder by the Books from events from California, which we're so glad we're able to do. And she says it's so much fun to see you all before diving into the books. So any writing-related silver linings to all of this? Let's start with Deanna.
Two, actually. One is getting to participate in events like this, because usually my publicist is kind of firm on the point. He doesn't want me touring north of the Mason-Dixon if there's a chance of snow. So the time of year that I release, I generally don't get to go anywhere north at that time. So I'm gonna, like last night's event, I had readers from Australia there. It's fantastic because I get to interact with readers who ordinarily I don't get to see, which is an absolute joy. The other thing is I've written 2 books during the pandemic, and the escape of being able to just go into that world I'm creating and leave this one has been, it's one of those things that just saves your mental health, because it can be so grim, to doom scroll on Twitter, and every latest new outrage that happens is just so fatiguing, that being able to, it's actually the most fun that I've had writing in years, because I am just completely and fully immersed in my own little worlds. And it's just a chance to go play. And on the one hand, it feels hella irresponsible, and on the other hand, it feels like, no, it's fine. You're getting paid to do this. You can escape and enjoy that. That's all good.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing, once we can actually do in-store stuff again, how we can still be able to do some virtual stuff like this. Because a third of what we've done.
I hope we can.
Yeah, because
I really hope we can.
About a third of our store's business beforehand was signed copies for mail orders. So people would buy signed books from us all the time, but never actually get to see what we would do in the store. So definitely everybody watching, we will not abandon the virtual world once we can do in-store stuff again. We're going to figure out a way that they can exist together. How about you, Lauren? Any writing silver linings?
Well, I would say the upside is absolutely being able to do events like this. I had a launch event on Monday night where there were, a few hundred people from all over the world who are able to come, because usually you get the, oh no, you're not coming to my hometown, but now you can come to everyone's hometown, which is amazing. And the writing silver lining. So I was working on Band of Sisters when New York went into lockdown last spring. And we lost our childcare. I lost my Starbucks. We bought an espresso machine. And my husband, who works with finance jobs where they work all the time, the deal we made was I would get 2 hours in the middle of the day from 11 to 1. And that would be my time where I was not taking care of the kids, because my kids were 2 and 6 when we went into lockdown. And, the toddler in particular was like, Mommy, why are we not allowed to leave the apartment anymore? And he'd keep pulling me to the window and pointing at the park down the block. Because I'd forgotten where. It was heartbreaking and dreadful. And for 2 hours a day, I would brew my 2 strong pods of Nespresso and lock the bedroom door and sit at my computer and be with the Smithies in the Psalm right at the point in the book where they were starting to go through really hard stuff. But it really helped me because they got through all that. And I'd hear the sirens outside my window, because there was a while in New York where the sirens were sounding all the time, but I'd be writing about them going through German bombardments and knowing that they got out on the other end. And a lot of the stuff they wrote in their letters home, like about how fine people are in a great crisis when all the normal barriers are stripped away, really stuck with me and got me through it. So that was the upside. The downside is that it's now almost a year later and I am still home with my kids. And it's been really hard, And the 2 hours a day of writing time, it's been hard. I just pushed off the next book by a full year which it gutted me to do. But, the realities of the circumstances are such that I don't think I could have ever turned that book in any way where it would, not being home full time with 2 kids. So to everyone who wants to read that book, I apologize. That's why it's going to be a year late. I have not been lying about eating bonbons, I promise. I wish I had. Please send me bonbons.
And how about you, Tasha?
Yeah, I mean, I really feel the same as you guys do. I mean, it's wonderful to be able to do these events. We don't have to like really get dressed all the way or put on makeup or like brush our hair. But it sucks to not get to see you guys in person. But the writing piece has been really good. I mean, I feel like I've been super productive. I've been researching an extra top secret project that, Lauren, kind of like your experience, I was reading these primary sources and I was like, yeah, we're whining about COVID. This is so not in the grand scale of human suffering. Needing to wear a mask is not really the worst thing that people have been asked to do, even though it seems like it's been going on forever and that it will never end. But it's really, I feel like we're all so lucky that our livelihoods depend on us disappearing into these fictional worlds, because it's been wonderful for the last year to be able to do that. Yeah. So I've been grateful for that. But I mean, at the end of the day, I miss seeing you guys.
Yeah. Same.
In real life.
Yeah, I'm sad that there is no pecan crusted chicken from the Raven or Good Company barbecue in my future this evening. And I thought about, I'm not gonna lie, I texted Matt earlier from the store and I was like, Matt, I'm kind of debating making you like Uber Eats us some good company tonight just because.
Oh, hell no.
It does not feel like a book release night without
I will come through this Zoom at you. Don't you dare rub that Good Company in my face when I can't eat it.
So Sarah just said in the comments.
But think how happy we'll all be when we finally can be together in person.
Yeah.
It's going to be wonderful.
Yeah.
It'll be wonderful. I don't think we'll take it for granted for a second. There's so many things, like even the idea of just checking into a hotel. Like, I'm not even sure I'm going to be resentful of my first TSA pat down.
Yeah.
Like, I may be fine with it. I may be like, oh, I missed you.
Yeah. It's like human contact.
Yeah. I know, because the last time that Deanna was in the store, like she had just gotten off of an airplane. Like, I mean, at that point it was crazy. We still weren't wearing masks and we were wiping chairs down with Clorox, but like we didn't even hug when you came in the store because you'd been on a plane and we weren't sure about like pandemic.
And I was not going to come near you.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So another related question, we'll start with Tasha this time and go back around the opposite way. So also sort of COVID related. So where's your first research trip going to be when we can actually travel again, Tasha? Do we have lag?
I think a moose stepped on the Wi-Fi again.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, ask me again because my internet is being horrible and I'm hearing you say instead of actual words.
So,
that sounded like Marley's ghost.
So where will your first research trip be once you can actually get out in the world again?
Oh, are you there?
Yeah. No?
I think I can hear you now.
Okay.
Maybe?
Maybe
Not.
Okay. So where is your first research trip going to be when we can get out in the world again?
Oh, okay.
Nope. Okay. So we're going to start with Deanna then. Deanna, where is your first research?
Wow. Well, that's yeah.
No. Tasha's back.
Well, right now I'm.
Uh-oh.
Tasha, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm actually writing Emily in Egypt right now. And so I would really like to be on a boat going up the Nile. But I have a feeling that I'm going to have to turn that manuscript in long before I can be going on a boat up the Nile. So I don't know where I will go because, I mean, I might just still have to go even if, the book is done.
Yeah.
Because, it's hard because it's just hard to predict.
Tax deductions.
Yeah.
And how about you, Lauren?
Well, I'm in the Tasha boat where, yes, actually pushing off the book by a year has made this now more possible. Right now, I'm working on a sort of prequel to Band of Sisters because I was really fascinated by the real life founder of the Smith College Relief Unit and her prehistory. She was a kind of Amelia Peabody-esque pioneering archaeologist, except American and even snarkier. And, who went off after Smith to Greece and was like, guys, I'm here to dig things up. And they were like, no, girls don't excavate. You can be a librarian. And she was like, you do not seem to have understood. I am here to dig. But then it gets even better. While she was there, the Greco-Turkish War broke out, as Greco-Turkish wars do periodically. And she was like, I'm going to go be a war nurse. And she fails her Red Cross exam miserably. And she's like, I don't care. I'm still going to be a war nurse. Pulls strings with Greek aristocracy because she has friends. And they send her out to the front. And she actually does amazing things, gets decorated by Queen Olga of Greece. But something goes wrong. Something happens because she leaves Greece, goes back to the States, and then winds up in Cuba with the Spanish-American War, nursing with Clara Barton and the Red Cross, before going back to Greece and having this amazing Amelia Peabody career where she becomes a groundbreaking archaeologist and so on. But there's this blip where she winds up going to nurse in the Spanish-American War. I'm like, what drove her there? Yeah, anyway, but like in real life, I would so love to go. I've been in Athens before, but I would love to go back to Athens and sort of walk the places she walked and try to figure out where she was actually nursing in the Greco-Turkish War, because these are these cities where I can find names on the map, but I have no idea what they actually look like. I'm gonna have to go like find old pictures. And of course, and I've never been to Cuba, and she was in Tampa and Cuba, and what a great excuse to go someplace warm and sunny with tropical drinks for a little bit. But I don't think, it depends on what happens and sort of how long COVID goes on, because this book is due in September. So people get back to me pretty darn fast.
Yeah. And how about you?
For me, I mean, I'm in the same boat. It's, things are clicking along, that we're having to write and just not able to get it out there in time to do it. So as far as not research related, I am owed a trip to Greece because we had, like, everything was booked. I was supposed to be in Mykonos last May. For 2 weeks, and that got shelved, obviously. So the everything was still paid. So they're all credits sitting there waiting for us to rebook. And my hope is to be able to get back to St. Kitts by this December, because last December was our 30th wedding anniversary, and we basically just ordered curbside takeout. So it will be nice to get back to St. Kitts. As far as anything research, I mean, honestly, the first place I would probably go is London, just to touch base again.
So if I'm going to combine a couple questions here into one. So do you consider your characters in your books as part of your family or your group of friends? And do you see yourself in any of your characters? Let's start with Deanna. The funny thing is the older I've gotten, the more similar Veronica's attitudes are to my own. I say this a fair bit, but I turned 52 last year, and my give a shitter is completely broken. Like, I can't even find the pieces. I don't know where they went. And it's hugely liberating. And, to write a character like Veronica, who is that sort of, no, I not only am not going to play by your rules, I don't even care what your rules are, it's a joy. And it's great fun to be in her headspace and to have that kind of close connection with that sort of a character. But ultimately, the characters are my creations. They spring from my imagination, and they do get bossed around a little bit. So they're, they are who they are, but within reason. How about you, Lauren?
It's funny because when I was writing the Pink Carnation series, those really felt like family. Like, I loved visiting with them. I would revisit the same characters again and again. There were the ones I really liked and the ones I liked not to like those cousins you have who you love to complain about, but you still see them anyway. with the standalones, I think I've always been very aware that I'm only sojourning there, that these are not people who are going to be with me for the long term. And I think I've viewed the standalones almost as sort of a field for experimentation, where I'm trying out different tones and different styles and different types of characters. And it's a little bit, I won't say clinical. I mean, I get very attached to all of my characters, but there is a little bit more of a remove. The funny thing with Band of Sisters is, even though I was working so closely with the archival materials, and so in some ways you'd think there should be less of me there because I am drawing so heavily from real people instead of just putting my own stuff in the way I usually do, I felt such a deep kinship with these women, because I'm an all-girls school girl who had kind of an old-fashioned education. And so these women and their backgrounds and their experience and their lexicon really spoke to me. And so I felt really attached to this book and these characters. The funny thing is I felt very attached to some of the loathsome characters, but again, the way you have those people who like you grew up with, but you can't stand, but they're still yours. And it's that sort of thing where, you know, the characters in this book, they did feel like family when I was writing them, but in that wonderful disjointed way where there's some you really love and some you understand and like, but you're not really that close to, and the ones you can't stand, but you love to complain about behind their backs. So that was, you know, my experience with this book.
And how about you, Tasha?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I totally hear what you're saying, Lauren, because I think for me, I feel like my regular series characters are really like family, and some of them annoy the crap out of me, but you know, you love them anyway and you get to complain about them. But the ones who are in the alternate time periods, that's more like a standalone, you know, where I can almost get a little more attached to them in the moment. It's almost like you can have that big infatuation because, you know, you don't have to follow through with it for the rest of your life, you know? But so you're sort of like infatuated, but there's a remove at the same time. But yeah, I mean, you live with these these characters for, you know, decades, and you get attached to them for sure. And I mean, I definitely, you know, you like, certainly with Emily, I totally agree with you, Deanna. Like, the older I get, the more shameless I am about having her have opinions that I have, because I'm like, hey, you know what? I don't care anymore. And I mean, you know, you want to write things that you like, right? You want to write about people. I mean, sometimes about people you hate, but I mean, but you know, you want to spend time in the heads of characters who you can relate to in some way.
No, I mean, I
still don't have that, you know, fortune irrevocably settled on me.
I could never write like an 18-year-old virgin now, you know, who's shy and demure, and like, that's not the character headspace I want to be in. That's just not, I mean, leave that for other people who can do a good job with it, because I absolutely cannot.
Yeah. So Tasha mentioned it, or she has said, I was going to ask everybody about, kind of, since Deanna and Lauren both have done other stuff, I was going to ask Tasha if you had had any thoughts of doing a standalone or venturing outside of Emily, but you mentioned that you have a super secret project. I won't press you anymore, and that while we're chatting here, and it's all here in the world, but so exciting to hear that you might be doing something that's not Emily too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's COVID. All of a sudden, I mean, generally speaking, I feel like if I can get one idea for a book a year, I am really winning. But I have had so many ideas lately that I've got like a list of things that I really want to write and think about, and characters who keep like nagging at me. But I love writing Emily, so I don't feel done with Emily. So in a perfect world, I would do both.
Yeah.
But, you know, who knows if the world's perfect? I mean, so far I'm not seeing that. But
And so, Deanna, you have a thriller coming out at some point. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I am instructed to say that it is not a thriller,
okay.
But it is a contemporary about 4 female assassins who are retiring at the age of 60 and who have to band together to take out the organization that has employed them.
Cool.
So, yeah. And my husband read the first chapter and said, oh my God, it's your Twitter voice. So if you follow me on Twitter, the book sounds a lot more like that than it does my Veronica books.
I don't know that I've ever heard a phrase that would like make me pick up a book faster than this book is Deanna Raybourn's Twitter voice. Like, give me all of them now.
Thank you, darling. That's a lovely tribute. I appreciate that.
And so, Lauren, do you have, are you working on a new Team W book?
Yes, actually, we're working on the fourth one right now. It's set in Newport in 3 time periods, surprise, surprise, in the Gilded Age, the 1950s, and the present day, where a poor, unfortunate Newport mansion is being subjected to a mansion makeover show.
I love that. Okay, I've got a question about those books. Okay, you know how you guys are always super secret squirrel about who's done what?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm not going to ask you to give away who does what, but I'm curious, do you always kind of gravitate towards the same time periods, or do you guys mix it up?
We totally mix up. Actually, the fun thing about writing the Team W book and being anonymous in our sections is that we can write against type, and that we can deliberately sort of trade off roles and actually work in different voices. And we deliberately do these red herring things where we've all read each other's books, so we can talk about each other's characters and imitate each other's voices and plant these hints. I mean, we all have tells, and I'm not going to give away what our tells are. Like, to me, my tells are really obvious. And I can tell, you know, Beatrice and Karen have their tells too, but I've noticed most people other than like my husband, and Beatrice has his husband also has picked this up, but like our editors so far have consistently given us the wrong notes, which just, oh wait, did I not tell
I love it.
You know, we've had 2 different editors so far, 2 different editors, 3 books. Every single time, at least, you know, a couple of people's notes have been gone to the wrong person.
That's amazing. I didn't know you hit it from your editors as well.
Oh, yeah, they don't know either. We tell them after they get it wrong. Because when they send us the notes, they'll also now send the guesses of, I think this is why, like with a little paragraph explaining the reasoning about why he thinks one of us wrote which one. And
that's
then we'll
amazing.
be like, sorry, wrong again.
I love it.
So fun.
That's so great.
So if you guys are fans of the 3W, so we will have an event with Karen White and Christy Woodson Harvey. We'll be doing a virtual event with them in May. I don't know what the date is off the top of my head. I'm going to guess and say like May 12th. That's somewhere around there. So keep an eye on the event calendar for May. We'll be doing an event with Karen when her new book comes out. Also, I wanted to mention, I'm sure a lot of you guys know this watching, if you have missed any of our events, you can check them all out on the store's Facebook page and also on YouTube. We will be uploading this video to YouTube. Give us a couple of days just because life, but give us a couple of days and I will send out an email to everybody. The same email that I sent or same address that I sent out the link to. And so we'll leave this video up as a kind of unlisted thing for a couple of weeks. So once Deanna and Tasha and Lauren are doing, or they're done doing kind of all the promo for the tour, we'll make it public so everybody can see it, but we'll get that sent out just in case you missed part of it or you missed any of it. You want to go back and see certain parts, that'll all be out there to rewatch again. I think I mentioned we've got Deanna's and Lauren's book plates. We've got Tasha's on the way. Tasha's book comes out on Tuesday. So we've got, if you've ordered one, you want one of the others, let us know. We're happy to send out, you know, Tasha's book if you order Deanna's, Lauren's if you order Tasha's. If you need all 3 of them and you didn't order it, let us know.
The Venn diagram of our readers is the circle.
Yeah. So you should have gotten a, like a stamped email with tracking info. But if you did order Tasha's, then your order is not shipped out yet, just because we're just waiting for those to come in. Trying to think if there's anything else I needed to say before we wrap up, other than I could clearly talk to you guys for hours. And again, this has been really wonderful to get to do. Again, it's not the same as being able to do it in the store and being able to go grab dinner and hug your necks and all of that. But I'm so glad that we were actually able to do this way. Lauren, thank you so much for reaching out to me originally and saying, hey, I've got a book coming out. And I started looking at dates and realized that this would all work. So I'm so glad that we were able to bring to bring you guys all together. I also wanted to thank everybody who's been watching. Thank you for supporting the store. Thank you for hanging out with us this evening. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I think, you know, the universe might have exploded that moment when you and I realized that we all had books coming out around the same time, and you were like, we could do a try event. I was like, ah!
All right. So I'm gonna get just a sec to catch up, just in case Tasha had something to say before we head out.
No, just I love you. Love you all.
Love you guys too. Thank you so much. So
Love you
everybody
guys.
take care, everybody be safe, and we will see you all soon.
Yes.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
darlings.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.